Welcome back to the Pension Task Force. We just took a brief break and made sure that any little edits that needed to be made have been incorporated into the final report document, which is now up on the task force page. So hopefully we don't uncover any more, but in the spirit of continuous improvement, if we find any other inaccuracies or inconsistencies, we can certainly make those changes as well. John Gannon, did you want to point something out from earlier?
Yes, I did. And I want to thank Judge Gerson for obviously following our task force hearings this afternoon. I did make a mistake with respect to the COLA, so that there would be no change in the current COLA for any active judges appointed or elected before July 1st, 2022. But anyone elected after that, the COLA would change. So that was what I inappropriately stated. And I thank Judge Gerson for being on the ball and watching what we did. And I did send him an email today confirming that we are taking care of that one judge who is in a unique situation. So.
Excellent.
That's it.
Thank you so much. All right. So Chris Roop and Becky Wasserman, I know that this has been a joint endeavor here to put together the task force words and numbers and making sure the two are presented in a way that that makes sense to the reader. So I wanted to turn this over to you to take us on a jog through the task force and help orient folks who maybe haven't had a chance to see our interim report, just sort of help them understand how to read what information is here. This, I think, is a pretty complete catalog of everything that we've done. So Becky, thank you and welcome.
Hi everyone, Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. So I understand that you are all looking at the report, so I don't have to share anything here. But the report is dated today, January 10th, 2022, and it's the final report. As was just mentioned, you all had your interim report in October, I believe, and this follows a lot of the same format of that report, and in fact includes a lot of the same information, but where some of the information from the interim report, like the financials, needed to be updated, that was updated. I believe you all received a copy of some track changes to show what was changed from the interim report, and Chris can go over that in more detail, but I just wanted to highlight that essentially it's the same structure, and the only things that changed were new information, new numbers that came in. And the way this report is structured is that on page 3, there is an executive summary. This summary just briefly lays out the creation of the task force, what you were all tasked with doing the past 7 months, and the recommendations that you all were asked to make. So the recommendations are laid out in more detail in the interim report, but this is just sort of summarizing what those recommendations were about. Also summarizes the meetings that you all had between July and December of this year, and does not go into the full detail about the recommendations. Those are on later on in the report, but just gives a summary of what recommendations are being made for both the pension system and OPEB in these bullet points here. So first there's first there's the VSERS system, and then following that is the state teachers retirement system.
Does Peter, do you have your hand up?
I do.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just, I checked at the bottom with the actual recommendations, and those read as I understood them when we left the meeting. But if you look up here in the executive summary, it states, let's see here, allocate FY21 general fund year-end surplus to the VSERS pension fund and allocate year-end surplus to the pension fund in future years. that does not describe what was agreed to. I mean, the entirety of the FY21 year-end surplus, half of that went into our rainy day reserve, which we need. And then the other half went into the OPEB. I think you're talking about the $150 million that we set aside. It wasn't it was not a end of year surplus. It was an action that we took to seed this task force with funds. So I would like to have that change to appropriately reflect, and then reallocate the end of year surplus 50% into the two pensions, 25% apiece.
Sure, I can. The recommendations at the end do go into do specify
Correct.
that.
Yeah. Yes.
So this was meant to just be a summary. If you would like, though, I can give the specific percentage breakdown there.
Well, I think we either need to direct people to the end or be correct in the front, because it doesn't read the way, if I'm reading it and I don't know about the end, I'm thinking that's a lot more money than it really is.
Sure. So specify the amount that was appropriated in FY21 specifically, and that the breakdown between the reallocation is 25-25 into the two systems.
Correct. Yeah. So instead of saying FY21 general fund year-end surplus, it's on the first sentence there in that third bullet, it's or the first part of the sentence, it's the FY21 general fund pension allocation. And it's half of that.
Chris Roop, I see your hand. Just want to make sure that.
Suggest some language in real time to maybe just help us move along. Representative Fagan, that was a really good call. Could I suggest editing this language, Becky, to say allocate $75 million from the FY 2021 general fund to the VSERS pension fund and reallocate 25% of the unrestricted general fund year-end surplus to the pension fund in future years?
Yes. And the reason why this is important, and the legislators will, I would imagine each of us do it this way. Whenever you get a lengthy report, what do? You will read the executive summary. Do you read the rest?
Oh, always.
Right.
I read it all, Peter.
Eric.
I did not catch this language, so I do appreciate this discussion. When I read that bullet point, allocate FY 2021 general fund year-end surplus, I'm thinking of the OPEB allocation is what I think of. The 50% of the year-end surplus that went to OPEB. And this says VSERS pension fund, so I guess it's confusing for me too. I'm just what Chris put out addresses that reserved money, which is different than what I thought this referred to. So yeah, I think we could certainly figure out, edit this language a little bit. And I also recognize that we're all doing this
On the fly.
On the fly, yes.
I can certainly make that change that Chris said, and I'll update the report to say that. And I'm also noticing that this was, I think, a change that was not made in the bullet point where it says that it was a 90% funded status. It's corrected later on in the recommendations, but I believe that maybe I'm confusing it now with all the different percentages.
No, there's two different issues. I think the 90% is correct as stated up here.
Okay.
The plus payment kicks in until it hits 90. It's just the CPI formula doesn't increase till it's at 80.
Okay, so this is still correct. Then do you want me to go through these bullet points or just point them out here that these were meant to be summarizing the recommendations? I can also suggest, if to Representative Fagan's point, if you'd like me to add in a sentence to say the full recommendations can be found on page 38, if you think that would help direct people there.
I don't think that that's necessary. It's right there in the glossary. So
Okay.
Is bullet point 3, is the intent to speak to the $52-ish million in OPEB that went to the OPEB trust, or is the intent to speak to the $75 million directed to the pension fund?
I think it's 75 because the last bullet is the 52 for the OPEB.
Right. So this is specifying to the pension fund.
Okay.
And that's correct. The last one speaks to OPEB.
Fair enough. Then I think Chris's language works.
I just posted something in the chat to everybody, but I want to read for the viewers some suggested language around those second and third bullet points to say appropriate 75 million in one-time funds from the FY 2021 general fund to address the underfunded liability in the pension fund. That's one bullet point. Second bullet point, reconfigure the existing general fund year-end construct to allocate 25% of the unrestricted general fund year-end surplus in future years to the BSERS pension fund.
I think that is right on point.
Okay.
Great. So I will make that change in the final version. Okay. So the rest of the bullet points, there's the directing the treasurer and the BSERS Board of Trustees to come back with a plan that is actuarially neutral to the pension system and results in no additional employer pension costs for DOC staff. The next bullet point deals with the ADAC plus payment. And then the final one, as was mentioned, is the OPEB appropriation. Okay. And then similar layout for the teachers. There's addressing that there's modifications to the COLA calculation and increasing employee contributions. There's an appropriation of funds to address the liability in the pension fund. There's the same language here about the general fund year-end surplus, so we can make that change for this in the same way that we're making for the state employee system.
Please. Because I read the bullet above that would be the additional $50 million in addition to the 75 million bullet that you're about to fix right now.
Okay, so I'll make that change in both of these sections. The next bullet is the ADAC plus, and then finally is the OPEB appropriation. Okay. The next section of the report deals with the membership of the task force. This is similarly laid out to what was in the interim report and has all of your names and your participation on the task force. Moving on are the hearings and testimony. So this has you all meeting between July 2nd and December 15th. I did not include this meeting, so I can update it to reflect that if you'd like.
Probably should.
Okay, so I will change that to you all meeting 18 times between July 2nd, 2021 and January 10th. Okay.
Thanks.
And this lays out all of the testimony you heard and links to all of the documents that were submitted. And this is also reflected on the committee and the task force web page. So I will move on to the background information, and I will ask Chris to jump in. And the next couple sections are, again, information that
Michael, wait, Michael, do you have your hand up, or is that something in your room?
No, I do have my hand up.
Okay.
Probably something in my room too, but thank you. Just a point of clarification. For the state employees, the contribution rates, in terms of the tier approach for the different salary levels, I'm just curious, did anyone consult with the Department of Human Resources and their ability to manage that type of change to their existing payroll system?
I don't remember. I know we talked with the treasurer about, but
So that just so everyone knows, the payroll system is not part of the retirement division or the treasurer's office. That's a separate system managed by the Agency of Administration and principally the Department of Human Resources. So I would just urge someone at some point to have a conversation with them about, from a systems perspective, what they're able to do. I'm sure they're able to do it, but it's probably going to take some work and some time and effort in developing that capacity. So just a point of
Yep.
information regarding that.
good. Yep. Okay.
There's another question.
I don't see another one.
I think you're on mute.
Thanks. I put my
Oh.
hand down after she recognized me. Thank you. Is that okay? I was just going to respond because we had a similar question about whether school business offices would struggle with the tiered approach, and we talked about doing an effective rate on July 1, or it could be January 1, and then any additional money would be would go into the system at that same effective rate. I wonder something similar could happen with overtime pay, or I don't know. It just seemed like the easiest way to do it. We kind of battled around with that one as well.
Sarah, any thoughts?
I think we're going to have to answer these questions during the legislative process, because if we're putting forward a recommendation that is too difficult to manage, then we'll need to try to approximate the spirit of what the recommendation asks for and find a way to do it that works administratively. That's, unless someone has a different suggestion. No, Michael Clausen, you still have your hand up. Are you wanting to jump in again?
You're muted.
I think he's putting his hand down.
Oh,
That's my guess.
I haven't learned how to put mine
Yes,
up yet, so.
I don't have another question. Thank you, Sarah. I'll take my hand down.
Back to the report.
Sure. So I was going to put Chris on the spot if he's available to talk about the changes to the numbers.
Sure. So the changes to the numbers primarily reflected the fact that when we did the interim report, we didn't have the FY21 valuations yet. So those valuations had since come in at the end of October. So the numbers, you will not see very many substantial edits in this document, but you will see just some minor updates to reflect the fact that we had another year of data. So if you're saying, from FY09 to FY20, this happened, now we just kicked it out a year and added FY21 into the mix as well. So I'm trying to see where the first change is. We tried to really minimize the number of changes that we had to work through from the interim report. So most of the first few sections have not been changed at all. Let's see here. I don't believe I made any changes to the background section. Scope of the problem, page 14 of the PDF. We revised the numbers as to add another year and, tried to be a little more consistent with calling things figures and tables and reordered them a little bit, tried to make things a little bit easier to read, but there were not substantial edits down until you get to where it says history of employer payments on page it sort of cuts off at the bottom of page 14, but into 15, we just updated the numbers here to show the impact of another year, and also added the compound annual or updated the compound annual growth rate statistic and added that. And yeah, those changes are not particularly substantial other than just making those factual edits to reflect another year of data. Same goes for the teacher section there. I am moving now on to I made a technical edit to the first sentence under how pension costs are funded, just to say that to the extent that those funds support members of the active payroll, that's a new line. On
Great, so
page,
I'm sorry, I'm trying to reconcile with you where you are with a draft document. What page are you on right now?
I was on page 17 of the PDF.
Okay, thank you.
It's also complicated by the fact that my track change version has a different page numbering than the PDF version, but that's the kind of day we're having today. I don't think there's a whole lot of other changes here until you get to the top of page 18. I just added that parenthetical in the top of the second paragraph where it says such as the assumed rate of return and demographic factors. That's just new clarifying language. And added this drove the significant increase in normal costs from FY19 to FY 2020. And Becky, I see there's a little typo there. We should capitalize the Y in FY 2020. And updated that chart, which I think you all saw right after we got the valuations. I presented a slide deck that showed how the numbers changed and revised some of the charts based on what you saw in the interim report. So figure 2D just added another year of data to it. The paragraph at the bottom of page 18 that starts the ADAC is calculated. I added that paragraph there just to add some clarity for folks so they understand what the ADAC is and how it operates, and how there's a level of uncertainty that can influence what its calculation is from year to year. Otherwise, I did not make any other edits in this section, or not any substantive edits, other than some renumbering and things like that. Page 22, we're under that second bullet point where it says by FY22, the combined ADEX for both systems will grow to 316 million. I added that parenthetical and will total 325.8 million for FY 2023. That's just based on the fact that we got new valuations that we didn't have last time. And right before you get to figure 5 on page 22, there's a sentence in that paragraph that starts with, it is common, however, for unfunded liabilities to arise. I added that. It used to be in a footnote. In the interest of trying to make this a little more readable, I consolidated a few footnotes and brought that information up into the document, but it's not new information. And I'm just scrolling through real thick. That is it on that section of edits. When we go down to page 27, causes of significant growth in liabilities. I added the sentence on the first sentence of the second paragraph, steadily increasing unfunded liabilities, 8X, and the state's total cost for retirement obligations are not due solely to any one factor. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, and you all know that. I was just trying to make the section read a little bit better. Under Great Recession, I updated numbers here, and under Great Recession, on the bottom of page 27, the last sentence that starts unusually strong investment performance in FY 2021, that's new. And that just reflects the fact that we have data now that we didn't have then. And I think you've all seen figure 8. That's just been revised to show that unusually strong investment performance I cited previously. The change to the assumed rate of return and other assumptions, page 28. That and the bullet points, none of that information is new. I just reordered a few things to try to make this section flow a little bit better.
Chris, I know this isn't new language. I missed it in the draft, but the first sentence of actuarial rate of return, the systems previously adopted actuarial rates of return that proved over time to be overly optimistic.
Mhm.
I know you're trying to capture the reduction in rate of returns, but I would argue it wasn't optimism. It was just simply changing economic and market conditions. So something along the lines of actuarial rates of return required adjustment due to changing economic and market conditions, I think captures that dynamic a little better.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm also trying to capture the fact that we had rates of return that we weren't meeting with our experience in previous years. So in that sense, they were overly optimistic. You know, we didn't quite meet our assumption. We came close, but we didn't quite do it for a lot of years.
Okay.
And to your point,
Are you okay with that, Eric?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through it. You know, I'm kind of in the process, putting myself in that process of setting those returns, and it's driven by the assets and the economic conditions, or at least it should be, not necessarily in an artificial construct of we'd like to achieve this. It's a more empirical exercise.
And you may want to also look at the second paragraph on page 29 to try to, which I attempted to thread the needle, but could probably do so more articulately.
Yeah, I think that does capture this dynamic, right? Of it wasn't necessarily Vermont was relying on optimism. There was a lot changing in the investment landscape. I don't want. This is a small thing. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I just thought we could capture better what drives the returns to actually change, the assumptions to change.
Other discussion?
So where are we with that?
I think we should flag that as something to mull over and keep moving on.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, the other change I made in this section was on the bottom of page 29, where it says additional changes to other actuarial assumptions. I added that entire paragraph that goes on to page 30, just to add some clarity and to try to make this section flow a little bit better. And address the fact that there's other assumptions beyond the assumed rate of return that change and can lead to the growth in the unfunded liability. And then I didn't make any other substantive changes in other than at the bottom of page 30, where we talk about the COLA. I added, it said cost of living adjustments, for example, have been less than assumed in both systems. I added for much of the amortization period because that was the case until we got our 2021 numbers back.
Yeah.
Other than that, the sections on page 31 and into 32, where you see these bullet pointed lists and the little charts. This information shouldn't be new, and I think you've seen it in the interim, but it was just presented in a little bit messier format. I tried to take it and just put it into bullet points with a chart so people can easily see what the relative size of different factors were for the two different pension systems on the unfunded liability. I see Andrew's got a hand up.
This is just a quick visual one. It says VSTRS on page 31, but all the VSTRS content is on the next page. I don't know if we should bump
We
that
should
down.
fix that too. But the language on page 31 and 32, that's really just reorganizing stuff you've already seen. So, and updated some numbers. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address them now. Or if you want to take a second to read through them, that's fine too.
Let's keep jogging, and we'll circle back if someone flags something that they'd like to ask a question about.
Very good. Then there's really, other than pasting in some updated charts on page 33 and page 34, there were no real changes made to those. If we go to OPEB, I started the first sentence by adding the words "the term OPEB," so because it's not good to start a sentence with an acronym if you can avoid it. Table 13 was pasted in just to show some visuals around the numbers. And all of the language after that chart on the bottom of page 35 into page 36 is new language, but it's not new in sort of the direction of the language. It's new in the reformatting and just updating the fact that we've had some more presentations on OPEB and added a little nuance to it. So if anybody has any questions, this might be something worth taking a look at, but otherwise, there were no other substantive edits to the rest of the report beyond, we can walk through the recommendation piece. And I added some changes to the data appendix at the end that just updates things for, another year of data, added some characteristics about the membership, added the members of the different boards of trustees. So people just have a snapshot on one page of who governs the systems, and put some of the demographic information in there, a group plan comparison chart, all stuff you've seen in different presentations. And I think that I've given or the treasurer's given, and that's just reference material for people. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that last section of OPEB on the bottom of 35 or into 36, but if not, we can turn this back over to Becky and go through the recommendation language to make sure that it's accurately capturing the substance of what you all are trying to achieve.
Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll move on to the recommendations, which are on page 38. So this section just starts with information, just explaining how you all came to these recommendations, the testimony you received, the evaluations on different scenarios, getting public input, and having a committee debate. And that it also recognizes that these recommendations come as a collaborative effort between the legislature, the executive branch, and all the representatives of the state employee system and the teacher system, and the role that the state plays in providing economic security for state employees and teachers, and the fiscal imperative to addressing these rising costs. So starting with the state employee system, this should reflect everything that you all discussed earlier in the meeting. The pension fund for the state employee system has an underfunded liability of $1.064 billion, and OPEB is $1.664 billion. The recommendations represent a reduction of approximately $133.4 million in the pension liability, and $891.3 million in the healthcare liability. So first, for state employees, except for Group D members, the task force is recommending no changes to the pension benefits of current retirees, beneficiaries, or terminated vested members. In FY22, there's that one-time payment of $75 million in general funds towards the unfunded liability, using 50% of the reserved $150 million in general funds in the FY21 budget. For COLA modifications, there's amending the minimum and maximum amounts of any decreases and increases to determine the net percentage change to the CPI. And that goes to 0% and 4% from 1% and 5%. And this is applied to Group C and F. For COLA, there's also a requirement that a member to receive retirement benefits for at least 24 months prior to receiving COLA. And the COLA changes do not apply to active members who are eligible for normal unreduced retirement as of July 1st, 2022. In terms of contribution rates, beginning in FY23, for Group C members, there's a 0.5% per year increase for 3 fiscal years, with a full phase-in occurring in FY25. And Group F members see no change for members with a base salary below the 25th percentile. For the 25th to 50th percentile, there's a 0.5% per year increase for 3 years. For 50th to 75 percentile, members have a 0.5% per year increase for 4 fiscal years. And then finally, for above the 75th percentile, there's 0.5% per year for 5 fiscal years. For retirement age, the Group C mandatory retirement age goes from 55 to 57 years. Group C members have an increase. I think you all mentioned this change earlier. It had said 2%. This is a 1.5% increase in maximum benefit cap by 1.5% of average final compensation for each year worked beyond reaching the later age of 50 or 20 years of benefit service. And that's applied prospectively to service actually worked after July 1st, 2022. There is also the ADAC Plus payment. So beginning in 2024, the state will codify in legislation the intent to annually fund an additional payment to the ADAC that uses money saved from a reduction on the required annual unfunded liability amortization payment. And that will grow to $15 million and in FY26, and then stay at that level until there's 90% funded status. Next, there's the general fund year-end surplus will be reallocated 25% to the VSERS pension underfunding. And of course, you'll see in the teacher section that the other 25% will go there. In terms of the new pension benefit group for DOC employees, there's a study by the state treasurer and VSERS board of trustee to make recommendations by April 15th. Of this year to create a new pension benefit group that's actuarially neutral and results in no additional employer pension costs. There is also a study for a longevity incentive that encourages Group F members who are eligible for a normal retirement to continue to work past their retirement date. There's a condition there that the incentive is designed to result in actuarial savings to the system and reduce employer pension expenses. I'll just pause there. Any questions? Oh, okay. So for Group D members, in terms of contribution rates for active judges, there's no changes. for members with base salaries below the 25th percentile. And actually, this just mirrors what is for the Group F members. So this list is the same in terms of the 25th to 50th percentile being 0.5% for 3 years. The next is 0.5% for 4 years. And then finally above 75% is 5 years.
Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's with respect to Group D in this tiering. I think we need to clarify whether that was the intent of Group D's proposal, because for Group F, you have a wide range of wages. So you might have people making $25,000 a year that would fall into that lower tier. For Group D, the wages are much more narrow. So, but generally higher. To exempt the bottom 25% of that higher wage earning group, that I'm not sure we have this codified the way Group D intended. So I don't know. I think we need to make sure that that we have the language right here.
I think John has an answer to that.
Thank you. I know Judge Grierson's following along. He has I have a change to make as we get further on into the Group D thing. So I'm sure he'll email me if he's concerned with that language, but he did not note a concern with respect to that. But I do have an edit. When you get back to when you finish with the Group D section, I will have a change.
I guess something else that might be helpful is Group F and Group C. We wanted parity amongst our proposals, but Group C also has a narrower wage. And if you blend Group F's increases, it comes out as 1.5%, which is what Group C is going with. So maybe the blended rate makes more sense than the tiered approach, but something to consider.
Thanks for pointing that out, Eric. We'll keep working on that.
So then there's additional changes for all active members, except for those that are defined as exempt judges. And that includes members that have 5 years or more of service and are either within 5 years of 62 years of age or 62 years of age and older, have 15 years or more of service. This calculation, so for everyone except these members, there's it amends the calculation for final salary to the average salary for the final 2 years of employment for active members who retire after July 1st, 2022. And then beginning in FY23, reduces the maximum pension benefit from 100% to 80% of salary. Raises the retirement age to 65 years or older for any new judges appointed or elected July 1st or after this year. And then COLA changes, apply the maximum amount on any increases used to determine the net percentage payable to the first 75,000 of the benefit paid. And then for amounts 75,000 or more, the COLA is set at 50% of that net percentage changed in the CPI index. Finally, in terms of COLA, the payments to members who have received a retirement benefit for at least 24 months, there's no changes to the current COLA for judges who are appointed or elected on or before June 30th, 2022. I believe Representative Gannon, you said there might be another change here.
Yeah, so I'm just going to read what Judge Grierson sent me. On reviewing the report at page 39, the reduction of maximum salary would not apply to exempt judges, but I think that's captured there. But just double checking that, because you have that language in there exempting certain judges.
So everything in the second bullet point, this basically applies to everyone except for those exempt judges. So I guess the question is, does that need to be clarified further for a particular bullet point? The way it's set up is that.
Yeah, you say active judges. I just want to make sure that Judge Grierson's comments, were part of our meeting today. But
So do you want me to, maybe I should just remove the reference to active judges throughout so that it's.
no. Okay. Would not apply. I mean, you do already say that these don't apply to exempt judges, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the lead-in language.
I know. I'm reading it too, and I'm just confused. Not because of what you wrote, but because of Judge Grierson's comment. But I will double check with him. I think we're okay, but I will make sure that I confirm that.
Okay, so then I'll move on to page 40 for the healthcare benefits. So the task force has two recommendations here. First, just recognizing the 52.4 million appropriation that was made in FY21, that the task force recommends enacting a pre-funding schedule in statute, and that the legislature should continue to apply the current pay-go amount for retired employees into the state OPEB trust fund. Okay. Then moving on to the teacher system. So the introduction just states the underfunded liability of 1.95 billion in the pension fund and approximately 1.5 billion in healthcare benefits. And the recommendations aim to reduce that by approximately 159.9 million in the pension liability and 836.8 million in the healthcare liability. So with respect to pension benefits, again, there are no changes to current retirees, beneficiaries, or terminated vested members. There is the one-time FY22 payment of 75 million in general funds to the unfunded liability using those reserved general funds of 150 million in the FY21 budget. Plus there is an additional 50 million in general funds towards the unfunded liability. The COLA structure is modified to also have the change in the minimum and maximum amounts to 0% minimum and 4% maximum. It requires a member to be receiving a retirement benefit for at least 24 months prior to receiving a COLA. This is an increase from the current 12-month requirement. There's the increases of 50% of CPI COLA formula by 7.5% each year once the system reaches 80% funded status, provided that the increase doesn't result in the fund projected below 80%. If it does project that it goes below 80%, then it pauses that increase and it's reevaluated in the following year. And then finally, for the COLA, it applies any increases to members who leave active service July 1st, 2023 or after.
Andrew's got his hand up.
Hi, thanks for going through this. Just one quick clarifying point we want to make is that any teacher that retires June 30th, 2022 or before that is not subject to those COLA changes of the reduction of 1 and 5% to 0 and 4, or the increased weight from 12 months to 24 months. We just want to make sure that any teacher that's retiring this school year before that July 1st date isn't impacted.
Sure. So the language does say that it applies any increases to members who leave active service July 1st, 2023. So
the intent to exempt those folks from any changes to the COLA?
Correct. Yeah. So let's say a teacher was at their max benefit, they retire June 20th this year. They're then not subject to that 7.5% increase in COLA in future years. They're staying status quo basically with what the current system is. just a clarifying point.
Okay, I think we can put in language. I'm just trying to think. We can just put in language that says no changes to the current COLA for those who are leave service June 30th, 2022 or before. Is that?
I'm also wondering about that July 1, 2023 date, because I think a lot of teachers retired June 30th and they would have been paying their contributions that whole year. And I think the intent is that if they've paid contributions that full year, the higher contributions, then they would be able to get the 7.5% increase on COLA in future years. Wasn't that the intent, Andrew and Kate? Or
Yes.
Representative?
Yeah. In order to be eligible for that increased COLA of 7.5%, you need to contribute your new contribution rates for the entirety of a year. That way it wasn't somebody retiring November 2022 and then being eligible for the COLA increase. So I think your point, Molly, is that if the date is July 1st, because teachers' contracts expire technically June 30th at midnight, we don't want to have somebody get mixed up because of a one-day piece.
Right. I think we need to say, I think that needs to change to June 30th just to cover that, unless I'm reading it wrong. Because they would be leaving at the end of June 30th. And they should get, they've paid contributions a full year, so they should get that benefit.
Perhaps that could be handled in the effective date section of the bill.
I can make the change here to say who leave active service June 30th, 2023 or after. I'll just take direction from the task force if you'd like me to make that change.
I think we're talking about two different dates, right? We're talking about a date for if you contribute new contribution scheme over the next year, the 2022-23 school year, then you would be eligible when you retire to get an increased COLA on that 7.5% each year. But we're also talking about a date whereby if someone retires this coming June at the end of the school year, that they would not be subject to the new 0 to 4 and 24-month waiting period. That the effective date of those changes is July 1, 2022.
This is
So maybe I can change that bullet point to say beginning July 1, 2022, modifying the COLA structure by, and that way that would signal that the effective date of that doesn't begin until July 1st of this year.
Mm-hmm. You mean that last bullet point there under modifying COLA?
I was
No,
thinking
at the start of that section.
the lead-in bullet point.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like we're muddying the waters, but we're really just trying to make them more clear.
And then for the other date issued, does it make sense to apply that increase for those who leave active service June 30th, 2023? Is that the intent?
Yes, yeah, because that's typically when members put in their retirement papers, my understanding.
And that's the point at which they would have been paying the increased contributions for a full year, because those would have started July 1. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is your intent for the first two bullet points there to apply to all actives upon retirement, except for actives who are eligible for, unreduced normal retirement as of July 1, 2022, and then just apply that third bullet point, the CPI increase to people who leave active service after June 30th of 2023.
Including June 30th.
Right.
Because that's the issue of that school
Right.
year ends on June
They'd
30th.
they'd
so-
leave on June 30th or after, on or after.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the intention there, Chris, for both of those pieces.
Okay. Does that make sense, Becky?
Yes, it does. Okay. So then I'll move on to the increase in the contribution rates. So this begins in FY 2023, and there's a schedule set out for a 3-year period based on salary level. And the minimum here is 6% in year 1 for the rate for 0 to 40,000. And then it goes up to 6.25 in year 2 and year 3. And then for the other income brackets, it goes follows 6.5 to 6.75, 6.75 to 7 to 7.5, and then 80,000 to 100,000. 7.5 and 8.25, and then 100,000 and 1 cent plus is 7.25, 8, and then 9. Okay. The contribution rates are calculated annually on a member's base salary as of July 1 and assessed on the member's total compensation during the fiscal year. Then in terms of the ADAC Plus, it's similar language to what was in the state employees section that beginning FY24, the state is going to codify its intent to have the ADAC Plus payment, which will grow to 15 million in FY26 and remain until that fund reaches 90% funded. And then finally, for the pension, the general fund year-end surplus will be reallocated 25% to the VSTRS pension underfunding. And then last but not least, the OPEB recommendations are using 13.3 million of Ed Fund money currently in reserve to make a one-time appropriation to the teachers OPEB trust fund. Enacting a pre-funding schedule and statute that charges the OPEB normal cost to the education fund. And then finally continuing to apply current PAYGO for retired employees into that teachers OPEB trust fund. Okay, that's it for me. I don't know if there are any other questions.
John Gannon has something to.
Thank you. I have heard back from Judge Grierson, and he indicated that the contribution language as written should be left alone. Group D includes probate judges who are sometimes part-time judges, and their salaries vary from county to county, and some of their pay levels may apply. Some of the contribution levels may apply to them. He also responded to the 80% max salary. He said, I agree with the reference to active judges conflicts with the general language exempting near retirement judges, and the clarification may be just a change to read active judges not exempt. I think we have Becky in there a couple of times, active judges, so maybe just active judges not exempt, I think would address Judge Grierson's concerns.
Okay, I can make that change.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, clarifications, modifications that you'd like to see before we move to the final step of this 6-month-long process? Chris Roop.
Mr. Clausen and I have been communicating offline, and he drew to my attention, there's one chart on page, I don't even know what it is in your version, but it is Below, it has to do with the 10-year averages of investment returns on an actuarial basis. Those numbers are reflected in the as reflected are from the FY20 valuation. The FY21 numbers are in the data appendix. I'm going to update this chart just to show the FY21 numbers right now.
Thank you, Chris.
I hope the people who are going to read this appreciate all the detail.
This has been well vetted by all of these eyes. So thank you all for your great work on it. Any other questions, comments, suggestions, revisions? Go ahead, Mike.
So I think, I mean, the recommendations obviously meet the unfunded liability portion of the target from the legislation, but as the ADAC reduction does not seem to be met. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Chris, do you have a running tally on how we did on our score sheet?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to add these up, but I think we're in the range of the targets. It's just there's a question of the year at which the full ADAC savings is reached. So the targets in Act 75 were not specific as to which year you had to reach those ADAC reduction targets. But the summary sheets are posted under my name on the website. And if you go through and add them up, I do think you will get within the range of the targets. It may not be in FY23 because some of this has to do with higher employee contributions being phased in over time. And some of it is also due to the fact that when you put one-time money in, it will not reduce the ADAC amount for 2 years after the year at which you put the money in. So when you factor those in, the ADAC, I do believe, comes down in both systems to well within the target range. But as part of these proposals, that some of that savings is proposed to be reinvested for sort of a lack of a better word. So the actuarially determined contribution itself would be expected to go down, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the state's maintenance of effort, if you will go down commensurate. I think that the crux of these recommendations is using a lot of that savings from the lower ADAC to then further get a head start on paying down the unfunded liabilities and also shore up the OPEB pre-funding.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that reinvestment is all good. I wonder if it can be explicit that we are addressing that part of the equation too. I mean, as well as the unfunded liability in those introductory paragraphs that we have above the recommendations.
Yeah, I think we could mention that we're well within the range. It's just, what do we pick the date to what's our measurement year? Is it 4 or 5 years out when contributions are fully phased in? Is it next year? Is it 2 years from now? I think that's sort of the question we struggle with.
Right.
Why don't we just put in the report, Chris, when it will be within the target?
Right.
We could do that. I'm going to need some time to crunch that number.
Other questions, observations, comments? So Senator White, I thought it would be appropriate if we did a roll call to vote on adoption of this final report and its recommendations. Does that sound right to you?
It sounds right to me, and I'm hoping that with the changes that are being made and have been made, and most of them are pretty technical changes or wordsmithing, that we can vote on it. Yes. Does everybody feel comfortable with that? It's the recommendations really that are
most critical.
The most critical, and I think that everybody has agreed on those sets of recommendations. So I just want to make sure that everybody is okay.
Can I just want to go on. I haven't had a ton of time to digest, the final proposal here. So I just want to, it's largely in line with things I advocated for through the last 6 months, but just want to recognize, I'm happy to vote to advance this through the process, but I just want to recognize that obviously this vote is a representative of myself. I haven't had opportunity to speak to the governor about, any of these details. So I don't want my vote in favor of this to be viewed as beyond what it is.
No, I think we understand that.
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate your participation in this process and your good eyes and good questions along the way.
And remember, this will then, the report will be published and then it will be translated, translated into a bill. And then the bill will go to both committees. So if there are technical changes or wording that needs to be addressed, that can happen. Michael?
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back, going back to the conversation Chris just had about including the FY21 valuation information as it relates to the investment returns. I want to make sure that I understood what Eric was commenting upon earlier in his comments about that conversation. Eric, can you reflect on that for a moment, please?
My prior comments, they didn't relate to the 2021 returns themselves. They related to the nature of our reduction in investment returns over time, and just what generally drives a reduction in investment returns. What's your asset allocation? What are the economic conditions? Etc.
Did you think that needed to be reflected in here somewhere?
There was one sentence that described it in a certain way that it didn't seem to me to capture the empirical nature of that process. That was all. It was a very minor comment. That was all my comment referred to.
I think that you were concerned about the word optimistic. And that but I'm not sure how we would reflect that.
Chris, can you reference to what specific sentence that is, please?
Give me just 1 second. I'm getting all kinds of issues here with my computer. The bottom of page, whichever version it is on you, it was right around 28 on mine. I'm closed out of the PDF, unfortunately, where it's right below the chart.
It is 28, Chris.
Yeah, where it says changes to the assumed rate of return. On that first paragraph below, where the heading was actuarial rate of return, the system's previously adopted actuarial rates of return that proved over time to be overly optimistic.
Remember, there's also a lot of backup information for this report. So everything isn't in the report. There are many papers and reports on how that's calculated. So I am
and
not.
I think that the clarifying sentences on the top of page 29, I think, are also helpful. Recognizing that most states, including Vermont, have assumed their rates of return. They're lowered their assumed rates of return because of shifts in investment outcomes.
Right. I appreciate that, but Eric, I want to make sure I understand what your point was about that language. Which sentence were you referencing?
The first sentence of the paragraph that has the heading actuarial rate of return. The systems previously adopted actuarial rates of return that proved to be overly optimistic.
And how would you reword that?
How would I reword it?
Yes.
May I offer a suggestion? A simple suggestion? What if we said that proved over time not to match reality, or not to match the actual
Expectations?
Yeah, just to get out the judgment of optimistic and make it factual.
Eric, was that your comment?
Yeah, that was essentially my comment, that, you know, when I read that, I could take away from it, oh, we really hope to get this. But it isn't about hope and optimism. It's an empirical process. So, I mean, I think what I had suggested was in line with what Molly suggested, but adopted actuarial rates of return, required adjustment due to changing economic and market conditions is how I would word that, because it isn't, it's a forward-looking process. It isn't, we didn't hit it, so we're going to take it down. It's what do we expect to get next year based on all of these conditions?
Are folks okay with that suggestion?
I liked Molly's suggestion, or something a little closer to that, because I think, I mean, Eric, you know this system inside and out, but you used a lot more words than than Molly did. So I think that that proved not to be true, I think. And so I think the simplest clarification there is probably the best. And Molly's put her suggestion in writing, proved over time not to reflect actual outcomes. Does that sound okay?
I like it. I like it better than optimistic.
I suggest the system's previously adopted actuarial rates of return that proved over time to be higher than experience. I'm trying to figure out what is a short way to end this sentence that conveys this.
Higher than actual outcomes, or higher than, yeah, whichever.
Higher than actual outcomes.
But I think the point is that we actually, in many cases, when you factor in the 10-year return, for example, we did meet the assumption.
Okay, it's just going to do a little time check here. We're down to the wire here with a little wordsmithing on one characterization of how we got here. And so I think if we can agree that Molly's suggestion or something there that, you know, in that ballpark is accurate enough, I would suggest that we move on.
Could we say the system's previously adopted actuarial rates of return required adjustment?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note, because it is a fact of what happened over the course of several years, that our adopted rates of return assumptions were incorrect over time. I don't think we need to use the term overly optimistic if we feel that that's too much of a judgment, but I do think it's helpful to reflect the truth of what happened.
This is Michael. I believe, with all due respect, Molly, I think the extra words that Eric is suggesting are actually provide more information and clarify what actually transpired.
That's fine. You guys, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm just offering words.
Thank you. I think Eric's point about due to the changing market and economic conditions is important to highlight what actually transpired.
How about this? The system's previously adopted actuarial rates of return that proved over time to be higher than actual outcomes and have subsequently required adjustment to reflect changing economic expectations.
I'm good with that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Last call.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I've been looking at both of our plans, and I see when it comes to contribution rates for the teachers, you're saying the ones with 0 to 40 and 40,000 to 60,000 in the base salary, they have their rates, the rate increase frozen at 6.75 and 6.25 for year 2 and 3.
Hang on one second, Leona. I'm pulling. So for the 0 to 40, it's 6% in year 1. And then year 2 and year 3 is 6.25 and 6.25. Yes. In year.
Yeah. Okay. I was just checking because I was like, oh, okay. So they don't get those in those salary bands don't have that same type of increase as the other salary bands. The same 0.5 increases or whatever. Is that how you're doing your increases?
Yes. However, the way it works though is that it's the marginal rate. So if I was making 100,000, I'm paying 6% that first year on my first 40,000, and then my second year I'm paying 6.25% on that first 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of our pieces with keeping that the smallest salary band is to have kind of that progressive structure to protect our lowest compensated employees from significant changes.
Okay. All right. I was just looking at that. I was like, oh, okay.
I think it's sort of analogous to the changes that were made on the group F side, where for the higher salary levels, the increase continues incrementally over 5 years instead of
3. Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same.
I'm just catching up with the Vister's plan and our plan, looking at all of it. So thank you.
All right, folks, are we ready to give the final adoption vote to this report? All right. So in committee, in the legislature, we would have a formal motion. I don't think that we've been quite that formal here in the task force. This is a yay or nay vote, yes or no, to adopt the report with the changes that we've made today. Is everyone ready to vote?
I do think we should do it by a roll call though.
I have the roll right in front of me and I'm
okay.
prepared to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Thank you.
If we can do the roll call, and then I would love for us to share some reflections on the process. So if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with the group about where we've been since July 2nd and how we got here, feel free to give a moment's thought to that. Are we ready? All right, everybody ready to unmute themselves for the roll call? Leona Watt.
Yes.
Eric Davis.
Yay.
Dan Trottier.
Yes.
Andrew Emrich.
Yay.
Kate McCann.
Yes.
Molly Stoner.
Yay.
Michael Pichek.
Yay.
Peter Fagan.
Yes.
John Gannon.
Yes.
Sarah Copeland Hanses, yes. Corey Parent.
Yes.
And Jeanette White.
Yes.
And for those following along on the scorecard at home, we dragged Michael Clausen to the task force as a liaison to the treasurer's office because we needed his expertise. We promised not to make him vote. So Michael Clausen.
He could give us a thumbs up if he wants.
Did give us a thumbs up. Yes.
Maybe he should pop the cork of champagne. I don't know.
Well, we'd each have to have our own bottle. since we're all in different places. So thank you, folks, for a long 6 months of really hard work, really focused attention. We have put lots of information in front of this task force and cataloged it all on the task force landing page. And this has been just a tremendous amount of work. And I want to thank you, because this is a really critical retirement security package that we are putting forward here. We are going to ensure healthcare security by pre-funding retiree healthcare, and we are going to, in joint contribution of the state and the employees, we are going to accelerate the pensions move to a more healthy status. We have had a series of conversations with all of you over the course of the 6 months that we've been working. And we're putting a solution forward in this report that asks the state to do more. And in doing that, we can accelerate the growth of our pension funds and get rid of that unfunded liability. And it also asks teachers and state employees to do more. We're making really good use of this one-time money, and I particularly appreciate the construct of not claiming the savings from that, but plowing those gains right back into the system to amplify the growth in the system. We're recognizing the critical importance of healthcare security, and I'm so thankful that this task force stuck at it and did the hard work that was necessary to get us to a point where we could put those healthcare systems onto a pre-funding schedule so that we are guaranteeing that benefit for retirees for years to come. We are absolutely, I am thrilled and honored to have been a part of this. I am so excited that we have a package that we can take to the legislative process and push through in defense of our public employees and their retirement security. So thank you.
Anybody want to say anything?
I really have enjoyed working with everybody for the last 6-7 months, however long it's been. It's been a lot of work, and I think everyone in the task force has asked really probing questions, and clear that everybody was here to try to solve a problem. And some of the suggestions that are in the recommendations, rather, that are in the report, are do require sacrifice, from members, and I think we have to recognize that and appreciate that, and hope, as Sarah said, that it puts us, particularly the OPEB, which we really can make quite a big difference if that gets into fruition, on a much more stable footing to secure these benefits going forward. So it's been good to work with everybody. Look, I'm sure our work's not done, but look forward to continuing that.
I will say that I was very nervous when we first started this. And I think that it took us a while to get to the point where where we trusted each other and we could actually work together. But I think the members of this task force could not have been better chosen. Everybody worked really hard. We were deliberative about it and respectful. And I think that is such an important thing, because we don't see that respectfulness in lots of conversations. And I just want to say that I thought, and everyone participated, and I just want to say I thought it was very obvious and important that people checked their partisanship ideas and their personal interests at the door and came into this really looking for a solution that was good for not only our employees and teachers, but for the state itself. So I really appreciate everybody's participation here, and not just the participation, but the way the participation happened respectfully and civilly. So thank you.
Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. So when we took a break, I went on House Appropriations website just to let everyone know, because obviously we're coming to the end of this week will be we will vote out the Budget Adjustment Act. And some of these things will already be, my intent would be to get them into the Budget Adjustment Act. The rest of them would go into the budget. But especially as it pertains to the one-time money, I think we can do it in the Budget Adjustment Act. But what I said during the meeting was the collaboration, really impressive, and the respect that we had towards each other. So those are the two comments I would like to make. Respect and collaboration. Boy, you just don't see that in very many places in today's society, and we need a whole heck of a, we being the citizens of the United States, need a whole heck of a lot more. Thank you. It's been fun in a sick kind of way.
Molly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to say that I also really appreciate everyone. I can echo all of that, but I also just have this newfound added appreciation for just how much time and energy and work goes into the legislative process. And I want to just tip my hat to every legislator, not just the ones in this Zoom call, but every legislator across the country, because I see it now from the inside, and the amount of volunteer hours that you all add to make this state what it is something that will come into my conversations with fourth graders when I teach about government from now on. It's just really, really impressive, and I'm filled with gratitude. So thank you all so much for the work you do year round, not 5 months a year. This Vermonter is very appreciative.
I look forward to a day when you can bring your class to the State House and I can greet them in person. I'm sad that COVID doesn't allow that right now.
They had a
Leona.
blast on the Zoom call.
Right.
Leona.
Oh, hello. So I think I'm just reflecting what Molly just said. I've been to the State House before, with VSEA and stuff, we're talking to lawmakers. And I don't think I really got the gravity of how much time and effort you put in. And something I think helped ground me when I was, because, when you're talking about policy and stuff and about your own things and you sort of get frustrated, and something that really grounded me every time, anytime I came away frustrated, I was like, you know what? This is not a personal thing. This is the lawmakers here are here because they love their state and they love their constituency, and they're here to represent for the people for all of us. So it really helped ground everything, because it wasn't like, oh, they're going against, VSEA or the teachers or the troopers. No, it wasn't anything like that. It was really about doing the best for us, but also for the Vermonters they represent, right? So that really was a great process, and it was great to be a part of that. It was nice to meet the people from the NEA. It was nice to meet Dan and Michael, and I got to know Eric, who is like retirement guru over there. He hates being called the guru, by the way. So it was impressive. And I was so impressed with all of you guys. And it was a very interesting experience. It was a long experience. I didn't know it would be that involved, but I'm very happy that I was able to gain this information and this knowledge through this process.
Thank you. Andrew.
I'll offer just a brief echo of all of that, working collaboratively together and getting to know everybody. It was a really great experience, and to be at the table with everyone and discussing decisions that are going to impact thousands of Vermonters now and in years to come, I think was so impactful. So thank you everybody for all of your thoughtfulness and open-mindedness and great questions. Chris, thanks for all of your information and your ability to present all of that. I think your work was invaluable there. So thank you for all of that. And I look forward to continuing to work on this as we move it through its next steps.
Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank everyone on the task force. I think everyone really brought some creative solutions to the table and really helped shape the, you know, what the recommendations were at the end of the day. And everyone was really engaged in the process and working towards a common goal. So I appreciated that. I also want to thank about all of the, you know, our members who stayed involved in the process and who have been following this issue for, you know, the better part of a year now, maybe more than a year. And I know this asks a lot of members, and I'm very sensitive to that. But I hope everyone will see this as a, you know, as a fair and sensible framework. But I appreciate everyone being engaged. I know I've heard from a lot of them, and I've tried to bring those perspectives to our work here. So thanks to all my task force members and also all of our members.
Leona, is that a new hand?
No, I think those are remnant hands.
Okay.
Let's just say out loud all
Wait,
together.
Corey, I don't know if Corey has his hand
Yeah.
up or if
Just a
he was
quick-
talking.
I just want to thank everyone involved. I know it's tough and I know everyone said it, but I do think there's quite a bit of balance in this deal. And I think, you know, recognizing that is critical. So thank you all. And, you know, we'll do our best to get it through the next process.
And a big thank you to Gail, who's been staffing us, and to Becky Wasserman, who came in at the point of the interim report and did a bang up job getting us through the end. And Chris Roop, thank you so much for being with us every step of the way. We do so appreciate you all for your help and support. We couldn't have done this work without you.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Well, I'm sorry to say that we are not going to be able to shake hands at the end of this process, but I do hope that at some point soon we'll have an opportunity to gather in person safely and really celebrate the monumental task that we undertook and that we succeeded on here in creating retirement security for our public employees. So. Anyone else want the last word?
Just call on us if you need us in any other step of the legislative process. We'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you, because I am right now trying to figure out the Senate government operations schedule for next week, and I may well be contacting you.
Great. Well, thank you all. And if there's nothing else, we should sign off and say good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.